Tell Me More podcast is being recorded on the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. We pay our respects to elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures. My name is Olivia Molly Rogers and I'm excited to get comfortable in the uncomfortable with you and remind you that nobody is perfect and everybody has something going on behind the scenes that you may not know about. I hope you enjoy the podcast. Welcome back to Tell Me More. Today I am joined by the lovely Sammy Petersen. Sammy is a podcaster, a very busy one. He is also a comedy man and just an all-round lovely human and my friend. Welcome, Sammy.
Thank you, and thank you for calling me your friend as well. I was waiting for that, just leaning forward, just going, and what else?
What else?
What else do you like about me?
Tell me
Real
more.
busy podcaster. Tell me more. I'm a busy podcaster. I was talking to you how insane it is to record, as you know, recording podcasts. It's actually quite hard a lot of the time when people need it to come out at a certain time. And they go, I'd love to do your podcast, but can it come out in 5 minutes? And you're like, oh, yep, sure.
Tomorrow.
Can it come out tomorrow?
Yeah, but you've made me quite stressed because you're so organised with how far in advance you record. You said that you've got 4 batched, ready to go.
Yep.
And that's the smallest amount that you've had.
Yeah, I try and be 12 and then it's really annoying when people just start commenting on like really recent things or things that are happening there. They go, Christmas is so lovely, isn't it? I go, no, it's not. I don't know when this is. This is April. I don't know why you're talking about Christmas. Why are you obsessed with Christmas?
Actually, I have to say, so I've been lucky enough to be a guest on both your podcasts.
Yes, yeah.
Confessions and Nature vs. Nurture, although you also have another one.
Yeah, I have another one. Yes, that's right. It's just insane. I have another one called Your Two Drunk Aunties.
You haven't had me on that one, but I won't hold it against you. When you first asked me to, this is how we met.
Yeah.
You asked me to come on Nature vs. Nurture, but I mustn't have read it properly and I just assumed that I was on Confessions.
Yeah.
I'd also looked you up and saw that, you know, you're a comedy man.
Yep.
So I was thinking, shit, I've got to be really funny. And I said to my mum, like, I'm being interviewed by this guy and she put the pressure, instead of making me feel better, she was like, oh, yeah, he better be funny.
Yeah. I remember your mum also did that just before you did like a live episode
show,
of Confessions as well, which is like,
well, it was at Comedy Republic and she said, this is at a comedy venue.
Do you know this?
Are you okay?
Are you okay? Are you got a mental collapse?
Are you
okay?
going to be funny? Oh,
it was so funny to have you on as well because the podcasts are all, I just find like Reddit confessions every single week and I read them out to people and they're always just the most awful things that you can find on the internet. Reddit is an absolute bin fire, a real cesspool of a place.
It's disgusting.
And then I start reading like to you and I've, like met you quite recently. I'm reading to you like something about alien sex or something and you really meet people. It's really fast track your friendships with people and see if they actually talk to you after the podcast. If they still want to be friends after the podcast.
Be?
Yeah. But you were straight on board, which was great.
I was. I like a bit of weirdness. But yeah, I was expecting the first interview that we did to be this funny, lighthearted.
That's so funny.
And then it ended up being a D&M and I was crying.
Yeah. Which doesn't usually happen on Confessions unless the Reddit confession is really awful. But
really upsetting.
Yeah, really upsetting, but which they can be. There's a lot of shitting themselves confessions, which I think can be very upsetting to some people. But yeah, but that is so funny that we quickly had to change gear because I was like, oh no, we're not doing that one. And then you had to sit down and just talk about your life, which was such a great episode of the podcast.
It was a really nice episode and it was a good way to get to know you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I really appreciate the fact that you can do both so that you are a comedian, well, a comedy man. You prefer to be called.
Yeah.
And also you have this ability to be so vulnerable and get people to be vulnerable because you are so kind. I was lucky enough to see your comedy show on the weekend and it was hilarious. I was laughing the entire time to the point where my face hurt and my abs hurt, which is the best.
Bragging about your abs again?
Oh, no. I hadn't done a core workout in a while, but I didn't need to because you just made me laugh so much. I think it's a real skill. I have so much respect and admiration for people that can get on stage to do a comedy act.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think that's got to be one of the scariest things in the world.
Yeah. Well, I do too. That's why I always call myself comedy man rather than comedian because I have just so much respect for the art form. Like I do think it's an art form. I know a lot of people kind of joke about it a bit and kind of like, oh, it's not really an art form. But I grew up loving it so much. Like I watched Judith Lucy and Will Anderson and Fiona O'Loughlin, and I was just like the biggest fan of them ever, and just didn't ever think that I could do it. And it was a really nerve-wracking thing to do. I think, I opened the show by saying that one day I'm on stage and I actually black out. I find out on stage that I have a heart condition, and I wake up on stage and I'm looking at like the most confused audience of all time, which is so fair.
I loved it when you're like, this girl was like, I don't get it.
Yeah, one woman up the back just going, is this still part of it? I don't know so much about this. But it was the most terrifying thing to do. And also when you find out that you've got a heart condition on stage, and then you have to kind of repivot and find a new way to deal with that stress, because it is a really terrifying thing to do a lot of the time. Like, and you can do so many gigs that don't go well, and you're standing there trying to find a way for the audience to get back on board. And you know what, Liv? Little secret. Sometimes they don't. And
well, this is the thing. This is what I want to ask you about. So I actually want to rewind a little bit. Your show is called Why the Long Face.
Yes. Yep.
Can you tell us why it's called Why the Long Face?
Yeah, so it's called Why the Long Face. So I grew up with a thing called facial palsy. I still have it. And it's a massive spoiler for the show. You find out I still have it. Never got over it. People always like to tell me I have, like they go, oh, I know someone with Bell's palsy. And I'm like, it's a different
Not the
thing.
same thing.
And I love it though when people keep going, yeah, I know someone with Bell's palsy. I go, not the same thing. I know someone with cerebral palsy. Not the same thing. And you have to keep going, it's actually not that. And they go, yeah, no, I know someone with that. But you said a different thing. Can you hear yourself talk? Can you actually hear yourself when you say that?
The word palsy doesn't apply to all things.
To everything. But so I've always had facial palsy. And when I was born, the doctor pressed the forceps too tight in delivery, and it damaged the nerves on half my face. And so I always did comedy about my smile, and it was always coming from a place of be self-deprecating. That's always funny. That gets people on board. You know, I always used to open a show by saying, because when I was about 19 years old, when I started doing it, 18 or 19, a lot of the time I get up and kind of talk about, at the time I had round glasses, and would talk about how I looked like a kind of tired, deflated Harry Potter, and that and then I would make a joke about my smile, and it would be something as easy as, I've got a grin from ear, and go, that's the end of the joke. And people would always be on board with it.
Yeah.
And then over time, you start to probably feel a bit more comfortable in yourself. You feel like maybe I shouldn't make jokes about it all the time, or maybe I shouldn't feel the need to make the joke before the bully can, or maybe I need, after a long time.
Is that why you started?
Yeah. I didn't really get bullied at school a lot, and that was because I was always making a joke before the bully could get to me. So I was always kind of making a real quick joke and go, I've already said it. Yeah. Actually, I've already said a joke about my my whatever palsy you think I might have. But then I started doing stand-up, and after one gig in particular, the reason it's called Why the Long Face is because a book publisher came up to me after a show, and he said, I would like you to write a book. And I was like, oh, great. Okay. And I went into his office the next day, and he had a poster on his wall for a book that had been published recently, and it was called A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to Chemo. It was a really great book. It was about a guy called Luke Ryan who had been through cancer, and his whole cancer journey was laid out in this book. It was quite beautiful. And he said to me, I think you're going to write the next A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to Chemo. I was like, have I got cancer? Like, what is this?
What are you telling me?
What are you telling me all about? Going, you're going to tell me that I have Bell's palsy as well? And then he said, I want you to write a book about your funny face. And he said, I've even got a title for you, Why the Long Face? The story of a boy who's trying to make people laugh when he can't even smile himself. And that was that was an adult talking to me. And I was really young at the time. I say in the show that it happened quite later, but quite a lot later in my career, but I would have been about 20, 21. Wow. And it was such a huge thing because it kind of felt like, all of that stuff that I was saying on stage was then confirmed by someone who I'd never met before and had kind of made me feel like I was different for the first time in a very long time. And I never really felt different growing up, but then this book publisher made me feel really different about myself and kind of changed how I felt about myself, and I really kind of struggled with how I looked after that. I became really self-conscious, and I would cover up my smile every time I laughed. I would look down every time I laughed. And after I stopped doing comedy, I had no, after I had the heart incident on stage, I kind of just walked away from it for a very long time. And at dinner parties, I used to tell that story about Why the Long Face, the book publisher, and it's a very long story. and people always told me, you have to tell that story. But because it was a book publisher, it was a really well-known book publisher, I always felt really weird about it. I was like, I don't know if I can tell that story because I might be embarrassing him, or I might be bringing up something that he doesn't want out there. And my friend was just like, fuck it, he said it to you.
Yeah.
And so I just decided that would be the main point of the show would be, I kind of have always wanted to tell this book publisher story for as long as like it happened, and enough time has passed where it's not coming from a place of anger. They always say that like comedy is tragedy plus time, or you have to actually work through things, because if you ever see comedians that get up on stage and talk about something that just happened that day, and they talk about something that's really personable and vulnerable, and there's anger or hurt in their voice, and it changes the whole dynamic, and it can be a really hard thing to hear and to watch.
It's just a bit awkward.
Yeah. And so I wanted to go back to it when it was not so fresh, and that I could actually stand back, and the whole show was just kind of meant to be a look at my life from why you stopped doing it, why you got back up, and kind of what happened from the age of, I guess, I started the show when I was quite young, but I mean, it kind of goes all the way through my comedy time, and why I kind of decided to come back as well.
Yeah. Which is amazing that you have. I'm so happy. I think a lot of people are very happy that you have come back to it.
Well, I had a friend that came up to me that I hadn't, they'd never seen me do stand-up because I haven't done it in 6 years, and you haven't seen me do it, like haven't been around for a long time. And a friend came up to me and hugged me after I finished the show and said, "Thank God you're not shit." Which I thought was such a great response, to be like, oh my God, I've been friends with you for so long and I was so worried you were going to be shit.
Oh no.
Yeah. Because I guess when you've been friends for that long.
Because what do you say?
Just going, well, I was like, thank you so much. But imagine if it was just a really bad show, and then, which, some people still might think it was.
I just keep thinking about Baby Reindeer, which I know that you have seen.
Yeah.
And I'm sure a lot of people listening have seen it. Have you guys watched it? Oh, Daniel hasn't, but Matt has.
Yeah.
And all I'm thinking is like the really traumatic moments where he is doing stand-up and it's just so bad. And you're just like waiting for it to end, and it hurts to watch.
Yeah. Well, I had that for a while when you first start doing stand-up and you're not very good at it, or, you struggle on stage, and people that would just kind of go, God, you had fun up there. Oh God, that was tough. Or just like they're trying to say, you look like you had a good time. They go, keep at it.
But
just little
no one
things.
else did.
Yeah.
How do you get past? You spoke in your show about some of the times where jokes didn't land, or things didn't go to plan at all.
Yeah.
How do you get back up after that happening? Like, because I would just want to run away.
Yeah. It is really hard. I think when you first start, I kind of heard someone the other day being like, if I had known how hard stand-up would have been when I was going to start, I never would have started it. Like, because you do bad gigs all the time. I think I pretty much opened the show by saying that I once did a gig to 2 people who absolutely hated me. Like, I walk out on stage and one of the 2 people, before I can even talk, goes, "You're shit." And then I'm like, oh, right. And I'm pretty positive. So I was like, I've still got 50% of the audience. So I just kind of did the rest of the gig to that one person. And it's things like that I was because I've never felt like a comedian, I've never felt like that was me. The best part of the show is when it goes badly, you talk with all the other acts that night. If the night was bad, it is very funny to sit around after and talk about how bad it was with a few of your closest friends.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of the way that you got through it. And they always say you're only as good as your last gig. So I was like, some nights I was like, well, I'm pretty shit. So I'd have to get up the next night so that you would get rid of that. Yeah. And you would get rid of that horrible feeling from the night before. I used to get so nervous when I used to get back up, and I recently got a tattoo on my arm and it says it doesn't matter. And the tattoo basically means that when I get up on stage, I would write that on my arm every single night, and I'd be like, it doesn't matter, because I'd be so nervous after I found out I had the heart incident that I'd be like, oh, I can't get up, I can't do it. And I used to write it doesn't matter on my arm every night. And just before I started doing the show, I was like, I want that as a permanent thing. So when I look down, I'll go, it doesn't matter. And I used to have that as my little thing, which is such a depressing thing if you saw it, like just to be like, it doesn't matter. I'm not saying everything doesn't matter, but it's just like
no,
this
I think
gig
there's a
doesn't
quote
matter.
where it's like really like when you're overthinking things and worrying about what people think of you, that at the end of the day, like no one cares and nothing really matters.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that was my mentality, but it is really hard. Like even after having 6 years off, and I was like, I'm going to get back in, and through doing the podcast and things, it's like, oh, maybe I can get some good gigs and everything. But I was just said yes to everything, and I'm ending up like emceeing a brewery in Frankston on a Saturday night when they don't want to listen. And it is that sort of stuff where you're like, oh yeah. And now that I'm 32, I think I've got enough life experience now that I can literally walk away from the gig going, that really doesn't matter. Yeah. Which is a better point. But when you're starting out, it is the scariest thing in the world when it doesn't go well and you're standing there going, I hope the next joke works. And I go, nope. Hope the next joke works. And then, in your head you go, I've got my best joke and I'm going to do it last, of course. You should always end on a high. And then you go, oh, that didn't work over.
No one's
Good
laughing.
night. You walk off to silence. Good night, Australia. You've been a hot crowd.
This has been shit.
It's been shit. But that is the scariest thing of it. And you never know. Yeah. You never know. And that was the main fear in getting back into doing it. I was like, but a friend of mine said to me before I started, they said the scariest bit isn't the jump, it's the bit just before it happens. And so I kind of think that every time I go, I'm standing on stage, I kind of look at my tattoo now, and then I kind of go, the scariest bit is actually just before it happens. And before I walk out on stage, I feel so afraid and so nervous. But then as soon as you get that first laugh, you just relax. And I don't know if it's the same for everybody. And, I don't even call myself a comedian and I'm saying that, but it is so funny to be like, oh, I'm relaxed now because I've got that laugh and they're on my side.
Yeah.
And as you know, like the people that have come to see me over the last month have been
well, they're there to see you.
And and they're the loveliest people in the world. When you're like tapping on a microphone and going, comedy's about to start in 5 minutes, everyone, and they're having a beer and going, what?
Like the trivia night?
like the awful trivia gig that I did. Like do you want me to tell the?
Yeah.
So I did a trivia night and it was like I was booked to do 2 gigs in one night. Oh, sorry, 3 gigs in one night, and this trivia gig was in the middle. I was running late to it, so I messaged the guy on the way to the venue. I was like, hey, I'm running late. He said, don't worry about it. We'll just put you on whenever you get here. And I was like, great, all right. So he wasn't there that night, but he was like, I'll just message the guy and he'll just put you on in the break. And so then I get there, I'm sitting at the bar waiting and they don't introduce me. And I was like, well, I'll just get up unannounced. Like I was just like, I'll just get up now.
I'm a professional.
I'm a goddamn professional. I'll just get up right now and just start talking about my life. And I did 20 minutes of complete silence. Like I must have looked like the drunk that had got up from the bar and started talking about my life. Like I just kept going and going. I was bombing and bombing. It was 20 minutes of silence. And then I finally got off stage and I went back to the bar and there was all these missed calls and messages from the guy who ran the venue. And one of the messages was just, Sammy, where are you? And that's when I realised like there's 2 Imperial hotels in Melbourne and I went to the wrong one. But like Tuesday trivia nights are a thing. So they both had trivia nights. Yeah. And I just rocked up and I literally was the drunk that had just got up from the bar and just started talking about my life. And so those sorts of gigs, like now, like I was saying, comedy is tragedy plus time. At the time, I had to go and do another gig after that and I just couldn't stop thinking that I had done comedy karaoke for these random people that were trying to do trivia. And I was trying to do this other gig, just kind of having an out-of-body experience, being like, you just did 20 minutes of stand-up to complete silence and no one got you off? No one was like, I don't think you're meant to be here.
Oh, God.
I think
that's the worst thing when you've done something embarrassing of just the reliving of it. It's almost worse than the actual moment.
Oh, absolutely.
Just your brain going over and over again what you just did.
And you wake up the next day and like even now, like going past the Imperial Hotel, I'm just like, I remember that hard time I had. What a wonderful time of my life.
Which one was it?
It was the one in the city on Burke Street.
And you were meant to go to the one
the
in
South Yarra one. Yeah.
Okay. Because I walked past the South Yarra one the other day and I was like, I wonder if this is the one.
Yeah. That wonderful trivia night took place to the most confused audience ever.
So obviously all of that stuff is very character building.
Yes. Yep.
And you've had to build up a tough skin.
Yep.
I want to ask you why, though, you won't call yourself a comedian, because I think you should. You are a comedian.
Yeah. I've always struggled with it, and I don't know if it's because I've been off for 6 years and I've kind of just come back into it. I feel like in a way I respect it so much, and I respect the people that do it, that I just kind of look at people like Will Anderson and Judith Lucy and go, oh, they're comedians. I can't call myself that. Which is a very weird thing. It's a really weird kind of hang up that I have.
Imposter syndrome.
Major imposter syndrome. That I can do the same gig as other people, but I would never call myself a comedian. And people still, they always introduce me as that. They always say, and I would go, oh, no. And I always kind of correct them, and they go, but you do stand up. And I go, yeah. And they go, but you don't.
Stand-up comedy.
Stand-up comedy. And I go, yeah, all the time.
Yeah.
They're like, right, so you don't call yourself a comedian. I go, no. But comedy,
I do think there is this pressure. Like, I have met a bunch of comedians over the years now, and more recently bumped into one that my sister was with me, and he was saying, oh, I'm doing stand-up and whatever. And then he left and she said, does he mean comedy? And I said, yeah. And she
Stand-up
said,
drama.
Nothing he said was funny. I'm like, yeah, but he's
Yeah.
There's an instant pressure that, like, if you say you are a comedian, you must be funny and kind of at all times. But, like, if you're not doing your show, I have found that most comedians that I have met are generally not that funny when you're just standing and talking. Like, I think that a lot of them are they're such deep thinkers and, taking everything in. I feel like they're watching everything, finding new content at all times and not necessarily cracking the gags, and then they save it for when they're actually performing.
Well, a lot of the time I think people think that like comedy green rooms and things are going to be the funniest places in the world. It's a lot of pacing.
A lot of pacing, a lot of drinking.
A lot of people writing notes really quickly and furiously looking through notebooks. And like, I mean, I think for me, I just admire it so much, and then I find it really hard to accept it. And I've always kind of been like, I'm more of a storyteller. I don't really have jokes or anything. And I remember once a comedian was like, you're kind of like smoke and mirrors. Like, you got a funny voice, but you don't really have jokes. And I was like, oh, I guess. Like, I guess I don't really have jokes. I just kind of tell stories, and that's what I do. But I still have the imposter syndrome, and I've had it always. I've always been, just because I admire it so much. And other things I've done, I've been very happy to call myself a podcaster or a filmmaker or whatever. But for some reason, the comedian thing just hasn't stuck. And I find it interesting that people will do, like, they won't even do stand-up comedy and they'll call themselves a comedian, or they'll I think I just have such an appreciation.
There's a lot of confidence in that.
A lot of confidence in that. I think
I look forward to the day that you call yourself a comedian. It's going to come.
It's going to come one day.
Yeah. I think it is.
Just a funny storyteller. I'll just call myself one of them funny storytellers.
One of them funny storytellers. Before we get into our next segment, I would love for you to tell me what has been the most challenging aspect of being in this industry for you.
So I talk a lot in the show about some of the people that I worked with in comedy, which was the hardest bit was working with a few people who were kind of known in the industry as addicts, and I have always kind of called myself an addict's addict, which is, from growing up, my brother was a drug addict, and grew up in that environment where it was quite a tense place, quite a scary place at times, and when I got into the comedy world, the people that I was drawn to the most were addicts. They were, they were the funniest people, the quickest people, for a bit, until that wears off. But I always found that they were the people that I was drawn to the most. And I did 2 shows with 2 of these people that one was really drunk on stage every night and couldn't remember their lines. And the other one was really high. He was a heroin addict and really high on stage and couldn't remember his lines on stage. And I did these 2 shows back to back where I was putting myself through this unnecessary hurt every night and this unnecessary humiliation every single night. And I think probably the imposter syndrome thing probably comes from a bit of that as well. I felt like I wasn't really doing what I was meant to be doing. You know, I certainly wasn't doing the comedy part of the gig that night. Like each time I did it, and I had to do a month each of those shows where I was flailing
How
every
many
single
nights a week?
So it was 6 nights a week.
Oh.
And the shows were so awful and so all over the place, and it was basically me improvising a show every night around a drunk person or you know.
You see, I think you called it a one-man. It wasn't meant to be a one-man show, but it was a one-man show with just like an unconscious person.
Yeah, that's right.
It
was the first one-man show with 2 people. Yeah, and it was just such a weird environment because I had to do these shows. But, you know, every single night it was just so hard to actually physically get up and do it. And I just had to keep doing it night and night and night after night. And that was the hardest thing I think that I've done in comedy, where I had to do the shows and I was kind of let down by my heroes. Like I was let down time and time again. And I think I describe it in the show as you know, like you finally get the opportunity to work with your hero if you grew up wanting to be an actor and you finally get to work with Johnny Depp. And you kind of go, is he the same Johnny Depp that you grew up idolizing? No. You know, but are you willing to work with him every night because you might be transported back to that moment where they did have something and they had this huge impact on you growing up, and you still hope that maybe they'll have it again and you'll get to see it and you'll get to witness a comic genius or someone that you admired when you were growing up and held them in this high regard. And now I can kind of sit back from that and go, that was just a really traumatic part of your life and that was a really hard thing to do. But I don't really know why I kept saying yes to doing those things. I just think I kind of thought that I was lucky to be working with these people. Yeah.
Kind of makes me think of like being in a shitty relationship.
Yeah.
You know, like you stay with the person because you're hoping that it'll go back to that glimpse of like what
it'll get better. It'll get better. And you think that every night you go, it's going to get better. There's going to be a moment where they, you know, wake up for one of them or you know, there'll be a moment where they're going to be brilliant and I'll get to see that live in person and it'll be the most amazing thing in the world. And when it doesn't come, you feel like such an idiot. And you also feel like you're letting people down. Like, you know, the audience members that came to I had a friend that his sister came along one night and every time I see her I still go, I'm so sorry. I am so sorry about that show. And I remember my mum came to one of the shows and she was standing at the bar. There was these 2 girls in front of her and one of them just said, that was like the worst show I've ever seen. And then turned around and went, oh, that's his mum. And mum just had to kind of be like, oh, like, you know, just keep moving. And she knew it was bad. It was all bad. And I think that's probably the thing that we were talking about before, that there was a lot of, you look like you really had fun up there. Wow, that was really a show.
But did you look, I can't imagine
I don't think I look. I think I looked stressed.
Yeah.
Looked stressed. And I think that was probably the hardest part of the comedy world. I mean, I also, you know, blacked out on stage in front of a crowd of people, but I still think that was probably, that led up to it and that caused me a lot of stress in my life. So that was probably, one of the biggest things.
You probably would have preferred to have blacked out for the other ones.
Yeah.
Just like miss the whole thing.
Well, I would have been in sync with the other 2. Just having a sleep on stage. Yeah. But that was the thing that like, when I did like, black out on stage, you know, everyone just thought that I was.
It was part of your show.
Yeah, and that maybe I was an addict or something. And I've never been an addict. A friend of mine said, because I've hung around so many addicts, that, you know, I could be a carrier, but I'm not an addict myself. But that's the thing. It's like, you know, I think most people would have seen me up there and every question I got asked was like, you know, were you doing coke before the show? Were you drinking? Were you? And I was like, no, I've never touched a drug in my life. Like, but people just kind of assume that you would if you're in the comedy world or
in the comedy world and passing out on stage.
Yeah. It's a good link to have. I think it's not uncommon.
I'm going to throw to Dan. Dan is going to take us through our next segment, which is an Ask Me More, but with my lovely guest, Sammy. I don't know what he's going to ask us. So
it's It's exciting.
We're in this together.
I don't think he knows either.
I have no idea. we do have a huge list of questions, both some would you rathers and just some random open-ended questions that will be fun to go through. And this one I thought was relevant to start. If you could write yourself a review, what would it say?
I think so the shows that I'm doing now, so I think the review, I would like it to say comedian.
Yes.
Firstly, I would like it to say that it was really funny. That would be the biggest thing, that it felt like a conversation. I always like going to see shows when it's like, oh, it felt like a conversation between some friends rather than an actual show. You felt like it flowed and that it went really quickly. That's always a good thing when someone's like, oh, it felt like it was 10 minutes or it felt like it was 20 minutes. And when someone's looking at their watch, it's not going very well. If they're looking at their watch and maybe texting someone going, gee, it's going on. I saw a show recently and a guy halfway through the show answered his phone and went, yeah, I can talk. I was like, no, you can't.
Wow.
You can't talk. So that was a pretty bad review of a show. But
yeah, that's not good.
yeah, I feel like if someone said, I think A, comedian, B, it went really quickly, and C, that it was a really funny conversational show, I think that would kind of be the best review I could have.
I think that's the review I would have given you.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
No worries.
Do you have an
Do
answer
I have
for that?
to give one? Oh,
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's a review for yourself. Like, that was obviously quite specific for
Yeah.
Sammy's comedy, but a review for
I think
yourself
I get like
as a human.
unsolicited reviews about myself as a human all the time.
On Taddle.
In my DMs, comments from my family. Nah, my family's great. I take that back.
Everyone giving comments and feedback all the time. Got some feedback for you. Don't feel you have to.
Yeah, you didn't ask, but here you go. No, my family gives lovely feedback. I don't know what I would like it to say. Probably something different to what a lot of people do tell me.
Because you're such a funny person, and I don't think people
Thanks.
say that enough about you. Like, I feel like, I feel like you're such a funny, and for me as a friend, you've been such a beautiful friend to me.
Oh, thanks.
But you are also a really funny person.
Thanks,
Not that when you first rocked up and I was like, we're not doing the comedy podcast today, but
Because you're not funny enough.
but you are such a funny person.
Oh, thank you. I think I have developed, in my family, we have to have a good sense of humour because we do give each other a lot of shit. So maybe that. I would like my review to say that I'm funny.
A runner.
But I also
a runner is good.
running away from my problems. Probably that, and also just like a kind person, and to focus more on my personality rather than anything else. I think I'm scared to show my sense of humor. The podcast has been good because it's, long form and I can have different conversations, but on social media, it's there's often not a lot of context and things can miss. So I think I just sort of steer clear of humor online.
When we went to the Australian Open together, and the day before, you put up the funniest video of when you were dressed up to the nines, walking into the Australian Open in a beautiful red dress, and you were like the most overdressed person in the world.
I was so stressed and so embarrassed.
Good, but it was such a funny video. But you were making fun of it,
Yeah,
which was
but
really
I think,
funny.
yeah, that is generally me, but I get a bit scared of people online.
It's fair.
I accidentally shared something recently. Daniel saw this. It was meant I sent it to Daniel and like a girls chat, and it was a meme. Now I'm just going to say the whole thing, so I might I've left it up, but it was Will Ferrell. And like, I get funny memes all the time, and I generally just send them to my friends.
You get funny memes all the time, whatever.
Yeah,
No big deal.
my algorithm's funny, which I think
no big deal for me.
tells me that I'm funny. It's Will Ferrell doing this stupid dance, and the writing on it said Acton Ferrell, and like the way that it was written as well just made me laugh because it was Acton like with an apostrophe, so that's Acton, G, no G. Acton Ferrell in my 30s because I did wifey shit for an ungrateful man in my 20s. I saw it, I laughed. I'm like, oh, relatable.
Yeah,
Even though I'm not actually Acton Ferrell. Anyway, I sent it to what I thought were my little private chats. I put up my broadcast channel without realizing.
That's so funny.
Within 10 minutes, Paul Versace messaged me a screenshot. He's like, oh my God, I love this. Everyone can see Funny Live. And I was like, that was not my intention. Oh, no.
Oh, no. Pull that right back in. Like you're fishing, God. I'll just pull all of that right back
So
in.
I deleted it, but then underneath it's still, even though the thing was gone, it said like seen by 937 people.
Oh my God.
I was like, oh God, that's a lot of people. Could have been much worse, but that was a lot of people in a short amount of time that would have then seen that I deleted it. So I was like, I got to own this. So I just messaged
What were you worried about?
in the broadcast channel. Oh, just that it would then become some article and then be like, oh, she's acting feral. Like that could be taken anyway.
Sure.
It will
Like
be
I'm
now.
Yeah.
You're welcome,
Sorry.
Daily Mail.
I'm talking heaps about not acting feral.
I'm not feral.
All right, so that's the sound clip, Floyd. That's the sound clip of the podcast. I'm not feral.
Got it.
It's Will Ferrell. Anyway, I just said like, obviously that was meant for a small group of people, not my entire broadcast channel. If you did see that, haha, have a good Friday. Something like that. Anyway.
I had a friend that once accidentally tweeted a direct message to someone, and it was saying how unfunny and awful this person was, and accidentally sent it as to everyone. And they were really famous, and they sent it to everyone. And I tried calling them right away, but they just put their phone down, like just was like, "Oh, this person's not very funny, and I hate them." And it was a really, I won't say what it was, but it was a really awful message. And then they just kind of went, "I'll put my phone down and just like move on with life." And I was trying to call them repeatedly to go, take it down. There's nothing scarier than like putting something out there that you're going, this is just for a friend and this is fun. And then
Yeah.
just the brutality.
I've got a bit of PTSD now. But
Yeah.
anyway.
This might
Now I've just shared it with everyone.
This might already be answered then. What gives you secondhand embarrassment? Because that definitely does if someone does that.
Like watching someone bomb in comedy that you don't know, and my heart goes out to them. That is probably the biggest thing where I see someone that's just starting out and they don't know the impact of what they're saying, or they'll say something that's like just a little bit, I don't know, mean, punching down, or there's something that they say that they don't really know the weight of what they're saying at that time because they're really young, and and everyone's filming themselves doing stand-up now.
Yeah.
Because they want crowd work clips and they want all of that. And they're filming themselves doing everything. And it's like, in a few years, you're going to look back and you're going to hate that you did that. Just don't film it.
Yeah.
Don't film it right now. Don't film the early gigs, and don't film you doing that because, but they're calling themselves a comedian.
So they're probably not feeling the embarrassment.
Maybe they're not
as
feeling the
much.
embarrassment
We feel the
like I am.
embarrassment
Yeah.
for them more.
Yeah.
I won't take this. I was going to say a similar thing, but I won't take that. For me, it's because I do this. I think it's when I see people do something embarrassing that I also do, and I'm like, oh, I know how that feels.
Yeah.
But it's very simple. It's just like when you push when it says pull, or when you pull when it says push, and you just see someone sort of like get stuck on the door. It just makes me so embarrassed every time.
I walked into a glass door the other day, and it was in a cafe, and I walked so hard into it, and everyone was laughing at me, and there was a woman that was pointing and laughing at me. And I started laughing so hard that I couldn't walk in. Like I just couldn't. It was just so funny because it was just like, I don't know how. I'm not a bird. I don't know how I've done this. And it was like the fun. It was so funny.
But did anyone ask if you were okay?
No, there's a woman that was just pointing and laughing at me, like pointing in my
God.
face. And
I'm so sorry that
secondhand
happened.
embarrassment for me that day.
When someone says you too after they've already said it is my favorite.
When it's your birthday and they're like, happy birthday, you're like, you too.
My 5-year-old son did that on the weekend. I was like, oh, embarrassing. No, I'm just kidding.
This is what a gorgeous friend,
Loser.
gorgeous friend Liv is on. So before my show on Friday night, you came and brought me a lovely Prosecco before the show started, and you went, and my text said that after you walked up to him and you said something like just, oh, is Sammy there? And he goes, fine, thanks. And he came back and he goes, I just saw someone, and I said to one of your friends, I said, fine, thanks. It's great when a waiter just says something, you go, you too.
Tell him I didn't really notice, but I did think that I made him uncomfortable. He seemed uncomfortable.
Yeah. It was just so fun. I think because he said that, I think he said, is Sammy there? Fine, thanks.
I was
Fine,
like,
thanks, and you?
this guy's not right, but that's all right.
What's the meanest thing a kid has ever said to you?
I had a kid point in my face and go, Whoa, what happened to your face?
Wow.
Pretty good. I was like, it's just Bell's palsy. Don't worry about it.
It's just one of the palsies.
One of the
One of the
palsies.
palsies. Yeah.
This wasn't me, but I have to tell this story and Mum's going to kill me, but it's so funny. So my mum has really big feet.
Bragging. Very nice.
You know what they say
Must be
about
nice.
big feet?
Must be nice.
She's
We've all got
got-
stuff going on.
Like, yeah, she's got big feet for a gal. And she was on a ferry recently from Kangaroo Island back to the mainland, South Australia. And this kid came over to pat Mum's dog. She's got this.
I thought pat her feet. A kid came over to pat her feet. They thought there was a wombat.
It's actually not too far off what happened. No, so the kid came over to pat Mum's psycho dog, Ginger. And Mum's, minding her, being very careful because Ginger is a bit unhinged. And the kid's patting the dog and she's like, oh my God. You've got the biggest feet I've ever seen. And Mum's mortified. She doesn't know what to say. And then the kid turns around to their parents
Yeah.
and says, Mum, Dad, this lady's got the biggest feet I've ever seen.
That's so funny. Everyone, quick, check this out.
And she said that everyone was so embarrassed except for the kid that's just like,
Yeah.
wow, look at these flippers.
These flippers. Well, kids have no embarrassment. That's the
No,
best thing. It's
they don't
whatever.
care.
I said what I
No.
said.
I had kids point out my acne when I was younger and that was not nice.
Oh, really? Yeah. That's not nice.
But they're not
Kids
trying
are
to, I don't
mean.
think they're trying to upset you. They're just like, they say what they see.
Yeah.
Big flippers and all.
We might finish with a few would you rathers. These
Okay.
are fun. Would you rather be the smartest person in the room or be the funniest person in the room?
Smartest.
Smartest. I think if you're really smart, then you can be funny.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think you do have to be smart.
Yeah.
Like a comedian. All the comedians are actually really smart because I think in order to be funny in a way that doesn't just offend people or just take the piss out of people,
Yeah.
you have to be clever.
And the funniest people in the room, it's always just draining for them. Like you just kind of watch them and everyone's kind of trying to say something to them. And I always get that. There's a wonderful comedian that Genevieve Moritz, who is always the funniest person in every single room. Like she can't not be funny. She's just hilarious. And I see other funny people walk into a room with her and go, like it's a relief.
Oh,
They're
'cause
like,
the pressure's
she's got
off.
it. She's got it. We're not even going to bother. She's got it.
Would you rather believe everything you're told or lose the ability to lie?
I'm really gullible, so I think I already believe most things that I'm told.
Yeah, me too. I don't mind
So I'll
believing.
go with that.
I don't
Yeah.
mind believing.
We'll be
Don't
believers.
stop believing. And I'm a believer from way back.
And we love to lie.
We love to lie. We can't stop lying.
Well, would you rather know when someone's lying or get away with lying?
Get away with lying. I don't think you want to know every time someone
Yeah.
says to you like, oh, your show was really good.
Yeah, I
Or
know.
like, I love your podcast.
Yeah.
And they actually hate it.
Yeah, I don't want to know that stuff.
I don't want to know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm the same. Yeah, I don't want to know.
I want to get away with lying if I have to tell them.
yeah,
that they-
your show was great.
your show is great.
Got away with it again. She's done it again.
Would you rather speak every language fluently, unlike me, or accurately predict the future?
Oh, every language for me.
Every language.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the future when people are like, oh, would you rather go back in time or forward? I always want to go back. I'd never want to go forward in time. I'm just not, I don't know.
I don't think I want to know. I think knowing what's coming would be stressful.
Yeah.
So I'd rather be able to talk to every person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll do one more. Would you rather be told you're not trustworthy or be told you're overreacting?
Ooh.
I think overreacting.
Overreacting.
Yeah. I think that's fine if someone says you're overreacting to
But
something.
is that like all the time?
Yeah, well, that would be annoying.
You're overreacting.
You're just like getting gaslit constantly.
Yeah. I want
Like
to
you're dying. They're like, you're really overreacting.
Those are some huge feet. You're overreacting.
You're actually overreacting. Yeah. The woman pointing at me laughing. You're overreacting.
I'll have to ask Mum for some feet photos after this.
Feet pics. Start a wiki feet for it. Quite nice.
We'll get like a creepy foot guy to sponsor the pod.
Living the dream.
Oh, I will finish with the usual oranges and lemons. Can you give me a lemon and an orange for your day or the last few days? Lemon being more neg. You know.
Yeah. Oh, so someone the other day I was at the dog park and someone so I've got a dog called Missy Diggins. Big fan of Missy Diggins. But he's a huge dog. And
So cute.
and he just wanted to play with someone, and the person kept like yelling about him and like yelling at me as well, and being like he's too big, and I was like, for what? I don't know what this measurement is that you're so stressed about. And they just kept saying like, you know, he's too big, he's too big. And usually, like, you know, if something happens like that, I just kind of leave it, and I'm just like, oh, whatever. And I was like, oh, but this is really annoying, because I'm like, oh, this person's like being really rude. And they were like shouting a bit and being like really, really annoyed about it. Anyway, I just started chatting to them, and they were telling me how scared they are of dogs. They got bitten by a dog when they were a lot younger, and that it wasn't so, I don't know, like that everything. I kind of think when you actually talk to people and find out that no, they're overreacting. I was like, you're overreacting. But I was like, oh no, when you actually talk to people that
You've got trauma.
and there's some actual stuff going on. And I think when you start to talk to people a little bit, you're like, oh yeah, that. But I think, you know, it's much easier to walk away from going, that person was a dick, and going, that was a bit of a lemon. But I think staying around was a really nice thing to be like, oh, I actually got an outcome and
So you turned your lemon into an orange.
An orange, absolutely.
That's
and
nice.
the same. So I want to give you both.
I love that. The combined one. Mine's kind of combined as well.
Yeah.
My lemon has been that I've been experiencing chest pain for like 6 weeks, and we spoke about this because you have experienced a heart condition. And I'd convinced myself that I was just not going to make it. So I was overreacting. But like I had a really good time last weekend because I got to Byron Bay and I was told I had to see a cardiologist when I got back, and so I was like, well, might as well go out with a bang. Had a great weekend. And then I've been really stressed about it, and the chest pain is really painful, but then I was anxious, so then I'm like, is it my chest pain? Is it my anxiety? It's so fun. And then I had a stress test on Monday.
Yep.
So yeah, that's been my lemon, the pain and the stress about it. But my orange is that I found out what it is, and it's not life altering.
Yep.
It'll be temporary. It should be temporary. It's pericarditis, and I'm not dying. So yeah, I'm really happy about that. So
Yeah.
It's amazing what like a little health scare can do to make you appreciate your health in general. And I'm just so grateful for, having a healthy body generally.
It's so nice. And it's so nice when you like can start to do things again, and you start to feel, it's like when you're like sick for a week or something and you finally get out of it. You can
breathe through your nose again.
Yeah. You change the sheets and you're like, yeah, I'm back. I'm back, baby. I'm going to appreciate everything forever.
Yeah.
But
I'll be grateful till tomorrow.
we were talking about it because
now.
after the show, I remember, me talking about the blacking out on stage. Probably wasn't the best thing for you to hear in that moment.
I was like, cool. Well, Sammy's back though. I'm Sammy's on the stage now, so I'm going to be just fine.
Yeah, I can come back from this.
Yeah. So no, I feel good now. But thank you so much for joining me. That was so much fun. It's always a pleasure.
Oh, you're the goddamn best.
No, you are. Thanks, guys. Thanks for listening to Tell Me More. This show wouldn't be possible without you. If you'd like to show your support, please subscribe or follow the podcast on your favourite platforms, and don't forget you can watch full episodes on YouTube and Spotify.